Bardock's crew were left reeling from the discovery that their boss was now so strong that he could trouble maybe the likes of Dodoria, he who loved to flout his power level to anyone who would listen. He was very much aware that the Saiyans were beholden to those kinds of figures, those kinds of statistics. So, Dodoria did it to make it very clear that he was not one to mess with in the best way that Saiyans would understand, through power levels. And as for Zarbon, what was his power level? No, he wasn't one for such displays of dominance. As far as he was concerned, that was beneath him. I mean, it was obvious that he was not meant to be trifled with anyway. There were even rumours that he could transform knocking around, but these were only snippets of gossip, and most of the Saiyan elites, they didn't bore themselves or bother themselves with taking gossip seriously. I mean, where would it have gotten them, really? Oh, if only they did on this occasion. They were aware that they should keep their talking to a minimum until they got to the pods. But when they did, the four of them were going on about this discovery incessantly. It was just too big to resist. Gine and Bardock completely unaware of this.
"Do we tell him that Daddy could take down Dodoria?"
said Pambukin with lots of enthusiasm. Toma, though, stopped that in its tracks.
What are you, crazy? Even if he could, Zarbon would come in there and waste those who did. And let's not forget about the Ginyu Force. Do you really want them on our case?
Totepo joined in.
"Come on, Toma. Bardock could stomp the small bullion guy at least with the freaky powers. That's not something to ignore. This is a big deal."
Yeah, Tomi,
Piped up Seripa.
don't tell me you're scared. We Saiyans shouldn't be frightened of dying in battle anyway. There's a difference between dying in battle with honor and dying from doing something completely moronic and foolhardy. Besides, careless talk costs lives.
The talk fell silent. The mood killed. But Toma wasn't wrong there, kind of. When they arrived back on planet Vegeta, the squad, including Bardock and Gine, was summoned to the central command post. A bit of an irregularity there, but alright. To report to a Saiyan elite. Okay, that was weird. Usually the elites were off doing their own thing out in space. You know, when Nappa and Vegeta are doing that kind of stuff, they didn't really do the busy work. They were so strong that they didn't need a team with them. Or sometimes, maybe just for the sake of company, they went off in pairs. Maybe just to stave off boredom. But sure enough, when they rounded the corner, they spotted an 8-foot-tall Saiyan with a decent lock of hair for his age, but a very thin pencil moustache and goatee. Bardock knew this guy immediately, though.
"Nappa, what are you doing here? Why aren't you tending to the king?" "I'll be the one asking questions here, maggot. You may have just gotten yourself a promotion, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna treat you any nicer, you low-class luckster."
Nappa beat his chest.
"I'm here to keep an eye on you. You caught the king's attention, Bardock. So I've been asked to tag along with you on some missions to see if you're worthy of his time."
Okay, Bardock wasn't expecting this from Nappa, the big lug shrugging.
"If it up to me, I wouldn't even bother indulging you, but hey, king's orders and all."
And so this arrangement where Bardock had to recruit Nappa to his team, on the king's orders, began. This meant that his team was less of a well-knit unit, more of a small battalion consisting of 7 Saiyans. In truth, Nappa's power wasn't all that special given his status. Bardock was thinking it was about, 4,000, 5,000 or something? It was a miracle he was a Saiyan elite, in fact, but no, it was usually the fact that he had been born this way. The trappings of nepotism and knowing the right people in action. Bardock knew he could kill him if he wanted to, but if the king was paying close attention, that wouldn't be all that wise. But then again, Nappa wasn't entirely useless. He did have his moments. I mean, after all, he hadn't been kicked out of being a Saiyan elite. They did have some standards, so he at least had some sort of use within the team. As a result, this did get them some good outcomes from some of the more intense missions. And it really helped having a Saiyan elite on your books. You kind of got some perks. And Seripa kind of liked this more direct approach that they had toward killing people and getting things done, Nappa. Sure, of course, Bardock was a good leader and had been up to that point. They had a very good reputation, naturally, but Nappa? Oh, he was definitely a different specimen of Saiyan. Gine could see this going down, her keeping a low profile with Nappa around. She did not like him. She did not like him at all. She found his nature to be intensely barbaric. Perhaps it was for the best that Bardock never became one of those elites after all. She was aware of a couple of stories in the past where people would get that label, and that status symbol would allow folks to become absolute monsters. I mean, most Saiyans weren't exactly heroic or noble or anything like that, but they at least had some semblance of honor that had been passed down through Saiyan generations. Mercy, when it was obvious, logic prevailed. Not with Saiyan elites though. But one good thing to come from all of this at least was that Seripa had gotten off her back, her instead wanting to spend much more time with Nappa instead of chewing her out. And let's just say that Seripa and Nappa would regularly, get busy, but most likely this was a ploy. Nappa knew that she was the one that had divulged the information via the scouters concerning Bardock's possible power level, and so it was natural for him to get close to her and get to know the squad more via that direction based from her point of view. For him, this started off as an effective and efficient way of sniffing out any potential insurrections coming toward the king. But Gine sensed that this would go out the window very quickly. He was a Saiyan elite, a Saiyan man, and she despised Seripa too, but they were kind of meant for each other. She was a catch for most Saiyan men, and she had caught him a big one. Nappa sort of forgot about the mission conveniently that he had been sent out to do, but Bardock kept him around anyway because it prevented discord from occurring, and it did keep the rest of the team honest, since the last thing he wanted was attention from any kind, any board or an administrator. No, Bardock just wanted to do his job, dang it. One morning though, 1 year later, things would start to get complicated. They were out on a longer term mission, reconnaissance, on a jungle world in a very uncharted part of the galaxy. Nappa had found nothing odd about the squad up until this point, but he hadn't really done that much of an effort in probing anybody, except Seripa. Stop it! And so the king had just kept him appointed to the squad on the behest of Zarbon, not to mention that Zarbon saw the results coming in and approved the addition of Nappa. Lord Frieza is very much liking this turn of events. Gine and Bardock had been training throughout all of this though, and thanks to the actual addition of Nappa, less attention was given to them, so for the moment it was convenient. But right now, they were waiting to get back to planet Vegeta and spend some time with their son Raditz, who was now slowly starting to spend more and more time outside of the nursing capsule. It was actually a very pivotal moment in his development because if he didn't, then it could have some dire consequences later. And Gine had been even more determined to get the slip on Seripa, even though she kinda guessed she was starting to actually edge her out in terms of strength at this point. But really, numbers, that didn't matter to her. She needed to keep training Gine to keep up now with Bardock, so that they would ultimately not need the others involved. They could maybe go off on missions together. Speaking of missions, their mission here had been somewhat delayed since the scouters were acting up thanks to the dense foliage on this particular jungle world and the fact that there weren't that many relays in the area, so data transmission and reports were slow to transmit and sometimes buggy. This was one part of Saiyan evolution that they hated. It was such a drag. Nothing got done. Saiyans didn't like sitting around awaiting further instructions. It was so boring. Good thing that Gine and Bardock though had something to do. Not that though. But then Nappa, who had exited his pod to go out and do his business, caught the two Saiyans sparring with one another for no discernible reason, really going to town. Huh? Nappa blearily tapped his scouter and noticed that this wasn't a play date. No, their powers are really being tested here. In fact, Bardock's was. Ah! No way! That stopped the training session in their tracks. Nappa screaming like that because, he wasn't one for stealth. The two of them routed on Nappa and looked terrified. Nappa! It's not what it looks like! Exclaimed Gine, who was desperately trying to defuse the situation. But Nappa, he'd seen enough in his book. Well, I might have known.
Secret training sessions with your wench, huh? Why the secrecy? The need to get more powerful. Surely you're strong enough for your needs, Bardock. What's the rush? Or is there something else you're not telling me?
Bardock clenched his fist, but honestly was unsure what to do next. He knew that if he rose in front of Nappa as Saiyan Elite, that power, all of his precious solitude, independence, lack of oversight, that would be curtailed faster than blinking. Nappa walked past him though, still keeping him in his field of vision though.
You know what? I find it kind of sad. I was starting to genuinely respect you. Appreciate your time. For months, nothing awkward. Simple, honest killing. Just the way I like it. You got stuff done. But, well, then you gotta go and spoil it all by showing me how desperate you are to get stronger. And then what? Go on, tell me. Why are you getting stronger, Bardock? Between us, don't worry. I won't shut you.
Bardock was struggling to respond, but this hesitation was all that Nappa needed to hear, at least in his mind.
Pitiful. A waste of time. You do realize that if you are trying to overthrow the king, you'll be eliminated by every other Saiyan Elite in the building. You get your jollies off for a few seconds, but then you'll be left with nothing but a carcass and a broken dream. And besides, the king's son will probably be stronger than him anyway, so your plan would have been pointless. He'd avenge him. What an idiot. I can't allow this to carry on, so...
Gine then realized that Nappa was right next to her, and she was caught off guard. At once, she was grabbed by Nappa, who was strangling her, attempting to choke the life out of her.
You plan to end the king? Well, then I'll end your queen!
Bardock didn't take too kindly to that. He broke his silence and walked forward.
Let her go, Nappa! What you're doing is stupid! If the king sent you and found out my power from God knows where, you know that it is all for show. You wouldn't actually.
No, he would. Nappa's grip tightened, and Gine raspily shrieked louder.
Oh, this is catharsis. Serapis told me how useless this one is. Surely you could do better than this, beanpole. Come on, where's the meat on our bones? Where's the bloodlust? That son of yours is gonna end up being a disgrace, I tell ya. Maybe if you two don't toe the line, I'll call ahead and...
But Nappa didn't finish that sentence. The beanpole had gotten her groove back. Nappa was too distracted with talking smack at Bardock that Gine had managed to drum up enough power to place her feet on Nappa's chest, push off of it, and then come landing, slamming in fact, a powerful double kick on Nappa's sternum, breaking it, and several ribs in the process. Well, I mean, that's the power of a mother scorn for you. Nappa was winded and fell to the ground in agony, dropping Gine in the process. The rest of the team exited their tents at the noise and saw what was going down. Gine, wide-eyed and furious, towering over Nappa on the floor. Bardock, left slack-jawed. Yeah, the big guy was at this point convulsing, trying to get back up. He could barely scream. Now, no. This isn't Gine going Super Saiyan or anything, that'd be silly. But her family means everything to her, and that way of life being threatened, taken away from her perhaps? That wasn't gonna happen. Nappa was struggling to breathe. That hurt a lot. But Gine stomped her foot on his throat, which made the task of him breathing even harder. His eyes were bulging out from his sockets, and he was clamoring to be released, flailing his arms around, but Gine would easily swat them away with her tail. Go anywhere near my son, and no force alive today will be spared. You got that? She was completely consumed with fury. Bardock again was lost for words. Where did this come from? Gine would never get engaged like this in missions. Her specialty was more an intel gathering and clearing paths for them, or making sure that everyone else would get back safely to places and buildings, etc. Not direct physical endings or anything. At this rate, Nappa would be. Seripa ran forward and tried to full Nelson Gine off of Nappa. Let him go! She shrieked, trying to pull her off, but she couldn't budge her. Gine turned around and said to her, back off, flatly and quietly, so that only she, Seripa, could hear it. before then elbowing her in the stomach and sending her to the floor. Seripa was also winded, trying to come to terms with what was happening. But soon enough, what was happening was clear.
Impossible! You traitor!
But the air to expel the diatribe any further was gone. Gine just stared blankly at him as his final seconds passed, she being the last thing that he would ever see. And just like that, Nappa expired. Her first kill. As soon as she felt the life drain from Nappa's body, Gine collapsed to the floor, her hands clasped around her mouth, and she wept tears of anger and fear. Seripa knew what had happened, and she wailed with equal emotion. Nappa was dead. What had Gine done? But that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now.